Hello, my name is Peyton Gross, and today I will be discussing Japan's rapidly aging population in relation to management and HR decisions. I chose this topic because we've been discussing the societal changes that Japan is going through due to its rapidly aging population and the kind of decisions people are making in order to combat that. And I thought it would be more interesting to go a step further and see what kind of decisions that companies are going to be able to make in the future in order to counteract that shrinking number of the working age population and what kind of HR decisions can be made as well. So a brief introduction just to explain the problem. If you didn't know, Japan's population is aging rapidly. One estimate says that by 2050, 40% of the population will be 65 and over. As you can see to the right, the population pyramid shows a heavy skew towards that older generation. Again, with the people 65 and over being much greater in numbers than the people of the younger generations. And this can happen, or it did happen, for a few reasons. The main reason being after World War II, people came home and decided to have a lot of kids and big families. They were having 3 to 4 kids per family, and that created a huge boom in the population. And in order to combat this, Japan decided to focus on Planned Parenthood and loosen up abortion laws. So the fertility rates dropped from around 5 in the early 50s to around 2 in the early 60s, and today they're nearing 1, which is much lower than the necessary number to replenish the population and promote healthy growth. So in addition to there being a rapid number of older people in the current population, the population is also shrinking as a whole. So there's two problems running side by side at the same time. And this can cause a good amount of issues. As I mentioned previously, the proportion of the working population is decreasing rapidly, and this adds to the tax burden on the new and current working age population by having to support that elderly generation. It also discourages investments in human capital and slows productivity growth as a whole. Um, in addition, the fewer workers that are available to support the elderly means that the current working age population is going to reduce their savings, and there will be a reduction in the loanable funds needed to finance real investments in plants, equipment, and research and development. So corporations are going to take a huge hit as a result of this shrinking working class. And in addition, the economy as a whole is going to take a huge hit in the next few years due to that slower productivity growth and the shrinking in the amounts of saving that people are going to actually be able to do. So I also wanted to discuss the tax impact on government spending as a result of the aging population. The resulting tax burden transfers the working age income to non-working age benefits, and some of those benefits include pensions, medical care, welfare, and education. As you can see on the graph to the left, this shows the government spending in relation to tax revenue over the last 30 or 40 years. The government spending is highlighted in blue, and as you can see, that is increasing dramatically while the tax revenue is decreasing, and that gap is getting larger and larger and larger. And again, this puts a huge burden on the working class in addition to being detrimental to the economy as a whole, because as they spend more, there's not enough revenue coming in to support that spending. So it would hurt the fiscal balance while also increasing the current account deficit. And this would cause a simultaneous twin deficit problem, which again would be not very good for the economy and not very good for people as a whole. You could see Japan going into a future recession if there aren't decisions made in order to counteract this deficit that is most likely going to occur. So for the connection to the future, like I said, the older generation is less likely to save money. And as a result of the older generation not saving as much money, they're going to become more dependent upon the younger generation to support them. And there's going to be more elderly people around than there will be enough revenue to support or tax revenue to support those elderly people. So young adults are much more likely to be worse off as a whole. By worse off, I mean staying single, having future children, and being less likely to save money due to the increasing tax rates, inflation, and having to take care of the elderly population as a whole. So by 2030, one-third of the population will be 65 and over, and one-fifth of the population will be 75 and over, which is going to be the greatest proportion of elderly to younger generation in the entire world. They have the oldest population by far, and this is not healthy for sustainable growth, and it's not healthy for the overall economy or the well-being of the younger generations whatsoever. So to relate this to future management decisions, the decrease in productivity growth will deter foreign investment. So as Japan's position on the global economic scale decreases, so will its arsenal of foreign investment, or investors, I should say. And without foreign investment, Japan can't sustainably take care of its own population due to the fact that the older generation is going to take up the majority of the room. And companies will have to look for new and creative decisions and solutions in order to counteract that shrinking number of working class. So in my opinion, although it's extremely controversial, the only manageable solution to create more workers in Japan will be through immigration. And I know Japan has a long history of being not so for immigration, I guess is one way to put it. But that needs to change because there simply won't be enough people or workers to support that elderly population in the coming years. And immigration is a great way to boost those numbers and really promote a healthy economy and help the well-being of Japanese people all around. In addition, HR will have to redistribute pension packages and healthcare. Because there will not be enough capital to sustain the growing pension funds and healthcare packages that comes with the rapid number of people going out of work. So in order to do that, they're going to have to redistribute a lot of money and dip into a lot of savings accounts of major corporations if it's even possible for them to do so. And again, that'll put a lot of strain on productivity growth and research and development and pushing forward as a company. So in order to, again, to counteract that, they're going to have to look for foreign workers to come in and help their businesses. And I read up on one program that started, I think it was 5 or 6 years ago, in the Philippines to help the healthcare workers because that's one of the major industries that's taking a hit as of right now. And this program had a lot of workers coming from the Philippines in order to help that Japanese healthcare system. There were a lot of issues and it wasn't very successful just due to the rigorous testing and certifications that you need in Japan as compared to the Philippines when it comes to healthcare. But something like that is something that it could be beneficial for the country. I believe so, and it's something that they should look for in the future. So for my additional reading, it was called The Gerontologist, I think is how you say that. But it talked about the effects of the natural disaster on the population and the older population as a whole. But the natural disaster, I mean the earthquake in 2011 and the succeeding tsunami and then the nuclear power plant destruction that all occurred due to that earthquake. And it talked about how the population that was hit the most was the elderly population and the older population, which is what happens with any natural disaster. And it talked about how the majority of people that were dying were 65 and older because they just didn't have the physical capacity to survive a lot of those injuries and infections that occurred due to the tsunami and the earthquake. And then the article goes on further to talk about the extent of how fast the older population is growing. And that's when it goes into the reasons why the population is so much older in Japan than it is in any other country. And it talks about how the fertility rates have played into that as well, and how that shrinking fertility rate is what is slowing population growth as a whole. So again, the population is simultaneously shrinking and getting older at the same time, which is almost the Murphy's Law scenario when it comes to population. And then it goes in further to discuss the resulting public policy issues that were put into place and that occur or are going to occur in the future due to that aging population. And then it goes on to talk about the emerging societal issues again that Japan's going to be facing. And one of those societal issues is switching from the norm of the younger generations taking care of their older generations to society taking care of their older generations. So one thing I read in the article was Japan, I think it was 20 years ago, around the year 2000, decided to invest extensively in universal health care and universal pension plans as a result of what they knew was going to be happening in the next 30 years. And they've really shifted from being so family dominant to more societal dominant, and like helping each other out with that tax revenue that I mentioned earlier. But again, the earthquake in 2011 changed a lot of that because people were left without anything, and it went back to a lot of people taking care of each other, which was extremely beneficial for everybody during that natural disaster. But in the next 30 or 40 years, it's going to be unmanageable because there won't be enough people to take care of that elderly population as a whole. So thank you, and then here